the International Commission on the Future of Food is my dream of an organization. Very light, very creative, very unbureaucratic. And it came about because after the Genoa tragedy, you know, at the G8 meeting in Genoa, activists were shot. The president of the region of Tuscany, Claudio Martini, was very keen to create a discussion on alternatives to globalization as a government. And he started to organize these discussions at San Rosori, and Caroline Lockhart was very important in organizing the San Rosori discussions. And at the end of the first, which was very successful, he just asked me, how do we give permanence to these ideas? How do we make it last? And I just said, bring the people who've done this together on a permanent forum. So the commission was really born out of this urge of a regional government to connect to social movements for the generation of new ideas. The commission's membership is very, very inspiring. I was given quite a free hand in finding who would be the best. And for me, there were two criteria. The first criteria was that we have so many movements. We've got consumer movements. And I remember the consumer movement was told at the beginning of the World Trade Organization, you're going to get cheap food, so globalization is good for you. You've got farmers' movements, you know, Via Campesina, the most visible representation of small farmers. You've got sustainable agriculture movements. Within the sustainable agriculture, you've got biodynamic, organic, permaculture, natural, etc., etc., etc. And I thought what this commission should do is integrate rather than disintegrate. And in the integrating, it was vital that we bring the people in each of these different streams who had never worked together into a common consideration about how should we shape the future of food. That's why we didn't call ourselves the Commission of Food. We called ourselves the Commission on the Future of Food. Because coming from the South, you know, the global corporations are always willing to say, yeah, we'll negotiate your past. We'll compensate you for your knowledge after we have stolen it. We will give you some compensation for the farmers and tribals we push to extinction. But the future is in our hands to decide. And we have to be part of that negotiation for the future. These manifestos are part of that negotiation. So we have people like Wendell Berry, the inspiration of the movements in the United States. His classic called The Unsettling of America created all the movements for sustainable farming. We had people like Edward Goldsmith, who's no more with us. But it was Teddy Goldsmith's early work on the connections between climate change and agriculture that really developed into this manifesto, and we remember him very fondly. People like Jerry Mander, the founder of the International Forum on Globalization, and it was Jerry's brilliant communication that shaped the style of how these manifestos are written. The manifestos so far are 4. We have the manifesto on food, the manifesto on seed, the manifesto on climate change and food security, and now a new one on the manifesto on knowledge paradigms and knowledge systems. In the commission are people like Carlo Petrini, the founder of Slow Food. And interestingly, it was after that first commission met when Carlo Petrini asked me, so this manifesto, how can we make it real? Because it was about a celebration of farming. It was a celebration of small farmers. It was a celebration of the earth. I said, turn it into that celebration. Let's have a gathering of the peasants of the world. And that's how Terra Madre was born. Terra Madre, in fact, is a child of this commission. And as you know, many of you have participated in Terra Madre. It continues to be a very, very inspiring platform. I'm not going to read all the names of people in the commission because it's long. I would like to stress that it's a network, and as networks go, networks are about voluntary association. You get together to give your best, to make something bigger than what you are. In science, it's called emergent properties. In politics, we also have emergent properties. And I believe what happened on the streets of Copenhagen yesterday, or what happened on the streets of Seattle 10 years ago, those are emergent phenomena. They are creating new conditions of what the future will be. We do this in the form of manifestos, not on the basis of 10 people getting together writing a manifesto for the rest, but the movements of the world getting together to say, let's distill our best learning. So this is based on experience. It's based on what we have seen to be true, what we have tested to deliver, and is a distillation. But we use the word manifesto, and Jerry Mander was the one who insisted on it, for fun, you know, tongue-in-cheek. We can write manifestos. We don't need big grand men with white beards to write manifestos. We can all write our manifestos. The framework of the manifestos is basically distilling the principles that make our work common. And that, I think, is the creative process. So when we get together, someone's from the slow food movement that believes in gastronomy and tasting good food. Someone is from the farmers' movement slogging away in the soil. Someone else is a brilliant scientist working on sustainable agriculture, like Miguel Altieri from the University of Berkeley. And by just discussing, we distill the common principles that our work shares. We then start to define the common principles of the movement for the future of food based on principles of sustainability, based on principles of justice, based on principles of peace with the earth and between people. The principles for the food security in times of climate change, I'll just run through the principles themselves. You each have the manifesto in your hand. You can read it when you go home, on your journey, in the flight, in a train. And I would say for the Danes, you would read it on your bikes, wouldn't you? The first principle, industrial globalized agriculture contributes to and is vulnerable to climate change. Second, ecological and organic farming contributes to mitigation and adaptation to climate change. Third, the transition to local sustainable food systems benefit the environment and public health. Fourth, biodiversity reduces vulnerability and increases resilience. Fifth, genetically modified seeds and breeds are a false solution and dangerous diversion. Sixth, industrial agrofuels are a false solution and a new threat to food security. Seventh, why didn't we have a clap on the GMO one? Seventh, water conservation is central to sustainable agriculture. Now we should have a clap on every one of them. Eighth, a knowledge transition is necessary for climate adaptation, and that's how the new knowledge manifesto grew out of this. Ninth, an economic transition is required towards a sustainable and equitable food future. So now the rest of my colleagues will share with you the details of the manifesto. Thank you, Vandana.